literature reading of the fantastic autobiography of such a great man, Mr. Solomon Northup. And I would like to say thank you for joining as we delve into history of his life. Also, if you looked at my earlier short that I posted, we were actually on scene at the location of Theophilus Freeman's slave pen in New Orleans. That was earlier this morning. Top this up. We don't want to have no spills. And I have to be honest. Hey, how's it going? Thank you for joining. I'm not in the best shape today due to having an excruciating migraine headache all day. But I just want to say thank you for supporting the channel, and thank you for supporting these live literature readings. Thank you so much. Jeff and Jackie, what's going on? How's it going? I was thinking about that pork chop sandwich that you prepared and was eating on one of the little posts you made in the community tab, I think. And one day I'm going to take a ride out there to Alexandria so I could get me one of those. Jeff and Jackie, could you let me know if you could hear my audio? Could you give me a thumbs up or something in the comment section? Because I'm wearing my lavalier mic today. And I'm hoping that the lavalier is picking up well. Or anybody that's listening, if you could give me a thumbs up, that would be greatly appreciated. So I will say, thank you so much. I will say, as a result of reading this publication, I have been reintroduced to Roman numerals, and it's coming along just nice. This book has been a very, in some ways, the book is hard to read, because this is real life. But in some ways, being that being that it's so hard to read because of it being real life, but being that the author of the book really lived this and he thrived despite what calamities befell him, you kind of fall in love with him. And that's where I'm at as a human today who's reading about his life. I think that as a man, as a father, as a husband, as a free human being who bred free air on free soil to experience being kidnapped, to experience being enslaved. When he talked about the first whooping that he got at Williams Slave Pen in Washington, D.C., you couldn't help but feel for his suffering. And when he talked about William Ford being, and I'm just talking about the book if you just joined it. Thank you for joining. Thank you so much. I'm just talking about some of the commentary of my personal commentary of this publication, 12 Years a Slave, the autobiography of Mr. Solomon Northup, a free man of color, born in Saratoga, New York, kidnapped and sold into the wretches and misery of slavery. What's remarkable is he knew of slavery, as most Northerners did, but now that he's living under the oppressive yoke of it, he doesn't speak of slavery with a bitterness that I'm sure he had. He speaks of it, as he said in his own words, this is no fiction, no exaggeration. If I have failed in anything, it has been in presenting to the reader too prominently the bright side of the picture. And so his book is 1000% the bright side of the picture. And just to give you guys a recap of the book, let me open up this one and go to chapter 1. I'll give you just a little update of the book. One of the nice things about this particular publication that I have in hand is they have a running head of the chapter. And you can look at that running head of the chapter and get the cliff notes of it, you know. So in chapter 1, he talks about his ancestry. Thank you all for joining. Appreciate it so much. We're going to read a chapter from this autobiography of Mr. Solomon Northup. And I'm actually, you came in on a good time because I'm going to give, thank you so much, Mia Din. Thank you so much. But I'm going to give an update of the whole book up until this point. So thank you for joining, and thank you for sticking around, and thank you for all of the wonderful comments and support. So chapter 1 is the introduction to his ancestry. He talks about some of his marriage. He also talks about his dad and mom. He talks about some of the work he does that later becomes of benefit to him. He talks in chapter 2 of meeting these two strangers, Brown and Hamilton, and he talks about getting you scared me, that's all. Getting violently ill and then waking up in Washington, D.C. in a slave pen, and and being in that slave pen is where he received his first uh, lashing, and he was beat so bad that he really didn't think he was going to make it, and he craved the fact of dying because of this unbearable treatment. He also had to deal with the mental side of a human being so vile and cruel and unforgiving, and the inhumane treatment that would befall him. In chapter 3, he's in William's slave pen and he meets a few other people. He meets Roy, he meets Randall, he meets Emily, he meets Eliza, and he finds out that they're going to New Orleans. And so on the boat to New Orleans, one of his friends, like he's going to take over the ship, but one of his friends died of smallpox. So that took all of the desire to take over the ship. Now, this lady he meets named Eliza, she was the mistress of a slave, of a overseer. And look, I'm struggling with dignifying these human beings that were sold into this horrible institution called slavery. They were free human beings, born just like you and me. And some of me speaks in the context of the book and the words that are used. But personally, I don't want to use the word slave. And so I struggle trying to use the word enslaved because I want to dignify these people, not as mere property, but as human beings, as mothers and fathers. But sometimes I'll go back and forth unintentionally. So he meets Eliza. She has two kids, Emily and Randall. And Emily is the baby girl, and she's for the slave master. And when he lost possession of them, even though he promised to emancipate her and her children, in a financial situation, he lost possession of them. and that caused her to be sold into slavery by her husband's wife. And so that's how she ended up being enslaved and not emancipated. So she's struggling and grappling with that as well. So, so that's where we at as far as chapter 3. Chapter 4, Eliza is split up from her family. They're all sold into different situations. They're in New Orleans, and they end up being sold to William Ford, who lives in Louisiana. And they travel to the Red River area, Alexandria, Voorhees Parish, and that's where they reside now. So Solomon's name has changed again. His name was Solomon Northup, but when he was in William's slave pen, without him knowing, they changed his name for the trip to New Orleans. So his name was Stewart on the boat. But then when he gets to New Orleans and he's sold to William Ford, his name was changed to Platt, but he never knew that. So his name has been changed twice already. And now he's going by Platt. But he didn't change his name. The folks that enslaved him did. So in chapter 5, he gets smallpox and he's on the brink of passing away, but he's able to get to the hospital and they treat him and he makes a full recovery. In chapter 6, that was chapter 6. In chapter 7, he gets to a place called the Great Pine Woods. And that's where Mr. William Ford, the man who bought him, lives at, the Great Pine Woods. And he really enjoyed Mr. William Ford. He was a religious man. He didn't abuse him. He did not treat him in a negative way, although he owned them as property. That was the institution that William Ford was brought up in. So he could have been more cruel than he was, but he treated them as human beings, born and deserving the same things that he did other than freedom. In chapter 8, there's a man named Tibbets that Solomon is working for, doing construction work, and Tibbets tries to hurt Solomon. Solomon defends himself, and as a result of that, Tibbets tries to hang Solomon with some help, and Mr. Chapin intervened and busted that up. And so in chapter 9, Solomon is put in stocks, and when Mr. Ford arrives home, he lets Solomon go from the stocks. He feeds him, tells him the rest, and protects him from Tibbets. In chapter 10, Tibbets returns, and he's going to take care of Solomon once and for all. And so Tibbets decides he's going to kill Solomon. They have a fight. Solomon has to run for his life, and he spends a whole day in the swamp. He's avoiding moccasins, he's avoiding the bloodhounds, he's avoiding alligators, and he spends a whole day, 24 hours, in the Great Pacadry Swamp. And so he arrives back at Mr. Ford's plantation alive, even though they thought he was dead. Mr. Ford comes home, or he's home. He commends Solomon. He feeds him. He tells him the rest. He takes care of him. And when Tibbets comes back in chapter 11, he sells Solomon or loans Solomon out to someone else. And next thing you know, he's working for someone else, and he meets some black women who do tree work. They're 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 lumber women, and he meets the likes of Mr. Epps, one of the most cruelest, demented plantation owners in the area. And Epps is an alcoholic. He's an adulterer. He's a cruel, evil man that beats his enslaved human workers just for the fun of it. And Solomon works for him for 10 years before he's emancipated. In chapter 13, Solomon speaks of Epps in the sense of how he is cruel and dehumanizing and abusive and no accord, but he also speaks of someone worse than Epps, Jim Burns. And Jim Burns is basically Epps on steroids, you know? So Jim Burns is a very cruel man as well. He's known all along the Bayou as someone who is, uh, as he said, a nigger breaker. And he's a horrible person. In chapter 13, so in this book, you have Solomon Northup, and you have somebody that is a remarkable woman. She's 23 years old, and she's petite and slim, and she's from Ghanaian descent. And her mom was brought to Cuba in some kind of way. Her name is Patsy. In some kind of way, she ends up in Avoyes Parish working for Jim Burns, and her name is Patsy. Patsy, one of the things that Solomon explains in great detail was your first day on a plantation, if you were picking cotton, like the whip is cracked all day on humans, all day. And there is no reprieve from that. From sunlight to sunset, the whip is constantly cracking. And what they do when it's your first day there, they beat the piss out you, and they have you so afraid to stop working that they use that as a gauge to determine how much of cotton you could pick. And so with a lot of these humans, whatever they picked, it gets weighed every evening. So your first day, whatever you picked, was more than likely your potential for what you would be able to pick. The minimum to pick every day was 200 pounds of cotton. 200 pounds, the minimum for any enslaved human on that plantation. And based on what you picked the first day, that would be what you were required to pick going forward. But Patsy was a young woman, 23, and she was required to pick 500 pounds of cotton every day. 500 pounds every day. And Patsy was a double victim, triple victim actually, because she was enslaved, but she was also subject to repeated rape by her owner, and she was also subject to abuse by her mistress because the owner wanted her and the mistress hated the fact that her husband wanted this slave, and so she had no peace, as Mr. Northup said. She had no peace. And so Patsy was, he said, if she had the intellect of a taught woman, she could have led tens of thousands of her people. So Solomon really respected her, and he recognized that she was cheated out of existence because of being enslaved. But Patsy is one of those people, since the first time I read this book, I've thought about frequently. Amazing woman, amazing woman. So now we're gonna start. Hey, what's up, Ferg? How you doing, brother? I enjoyed your video on what you do when you're not fishing. We got to work, but I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed that a lot. And it's good to know you in the trades. I thought you were a secret billionaire, to be honest, as much as you fish. Yep. So, like I said earlier in the broadcast, I had a migraine headache today. So, right now, this is the best I've felt all day. And I took some medicine to feel better, but I'm not gonna. Haha, no, blue collar. I'll let you get to it. No, no, no. I'm actually done. I was just doing some commentary on the book, and I'm reading this book. I read it once before. I got this book from an elderly lady that I knew, who I used to do knickknack work for. I'd cut her grass, weed the garden. Once I took out a raccoon that was causing trouble at her place. Um, Cleaned out her gutter cans. Just did. She was elderly. She couldn't get on a ladder, so I would do all kind of little knickknack stuff for her. And she gave me this book. I read the book, and I fell in love with Solomon Northup. And it's a powerful autobiography of a man who did not let slavery make him bitter, and he survived slavery. He was rescued. He went back to his family, and as a result of that, you know, he was able to write something that a lot of people benefited from, his autobiography. But I want to thank y'all for joining. I really do. I want to thank y'all for supporting Pause and Play NOLA in its many different facets of content, as some people would say. But thank you so much. I do appreciate it. And I plan on doing other live videos. I'm just trying to get some stuff together in my personal life so that I could do a little bit more. But, you know, that's what it is. So as soon as things change, things will change. And right now, I just want to try to get through this book as well. And I'll read live tomorrow. I'm going to try to do a daytime live as opposed to an evening live. But I have some stuff I want to cook as well. I'm ready to break out the big pots, but it's just one of those things where you have to have time, money, and situation and health to do all of that. But I have things I do every day, like cycling. I do that every day. I ride 20 miles minimum every day. So that's non negotiable. And I have some other stuff coming up where I have a seminar to go to. That's going to be a week long. So I'm just trying to get everything. Yeah, keep chugging, bro. I appreciate that, Ferg. And that's it. But I thank y'all for y'all time. And I thank y'all for y'all support. And if you're not subscribed to Fishing with Ferg, please subscribe. I think he's a great guy. He's got a great temperament and great content as well. Sometimes you meet content creators that you can't talk to. You could comment, you could talk to them in the comment section. They never reply back. That's not Ferg. That's not Ferg. So appreciate you, Ferg. Thank you so much, brother. And I'll see y'all at the next one, okay? So I just have one more thing to say and do. I'm going to put the lights out because that's kind of, where we at. Put these lights out to end our live literature session. All right, let's see if I can do this the right way. See if I can do this the right way. All right. And 2 more. And remember, y'all come back now, you hear? Thank you.